Hey everyone, welcome back to this series on yoga for resilience. Today is an asana day, physical postures, and in this lesson we are looking at balance. Now if you're thinking, oh no, my balance is terrible, I'm going to fall over, don't worry, it's not that kind of balance. What we're talking about is having balance in our lives. So in yoga, we try to balance things by, for example, we do things on both sides, but also we tend to balance poses with counter poses. So if we're bending one way, like we're doing a back bend, we might do some kind of fold to provide some counter to that. And there are recommendations of, okay, do this pose and then you do this counter pose, but actually most of it's intuitive. If you do a certain pose, you're doing cobra, and then you do like a seated forward fold, you can tell whether it feels good or not and whether it's a good counter pose because you've stretched out a certain area of your body and then you put your body in the kind of opposite and it just feels good. And our lives are exactly the same in this. So bringing this back to resilience is that we tend to lead these really busy lives. And so in order to effectively counter them, we need to do the counter poses. So we need to bring some balance to our lives and have these moments of stillness, these moments of slowness, these moments of self-care so that so we're ready to go again, so that we have those energy reserves because we're not constantly depleting ourselves. So we've got a couple of poses for you today. Do make sure that you've got some props, and really you don't need any like fancy yoga props. Like I'm sat on a block, but actually the stuff I'm going to use today, I've just got a blanket. This is a cushion from my sofa. You can even pull like the cushions off the back of your sofa if you don't have any throw cushions. You can use a duvet, a pillow. I've used jumpers before just to like pad out my knees. Those work really well. So don't spend any money on fancy props. Just use whatever you have around the house. And really, if you are finding any discomfort here, then do take the time to rearrange. Do take the time to find something that works for you. The first pose we're going to come into is extended puppy. So this is kind of like child's pose, but we're going to keep our knees the kind of 90-degree bend here. So if you think in child's pose, we'd come back to sit on the heels and then we would stretch out. In this pose, extended puppy, we're going to keep a 90-degree bend here, and then we're going to bring our forehead down to the mat, and we're going to bring our arms out in front of us. So it otherwise looks a lot like child's pose, but we're not sitting back on the heels, we're keeping our hips in the air. Now, how can we make this more comfortable? Well, if you're not comfortable, so first of all, you can prop under the head, so maybe put a pillow. That can feel really nice. You could also put bolsters or blankets under there, especially if you've got like an actual yoga bolster that provides a bit more stability than this. You might want to put a blanket under the knees, so you could, if they're feeling a bit harsh on the mat, you could put a blanket here, and that'll pad out the knees a little bit. You can also build up, like stack multiple props. If you're finding it difficult to get your head all the way down, just stack everything up. And if this pose isn't working for you, you could also do like a traditional child's pose. Or you could also do, like, you can keep your head up if that's working for you. You can still get that kind of bend in the back. For me personally, I'm going to go ahead and use the cushion just to give my head that extra bit of comfort. And as with most of these classes, we're going to hold each of these poses for a little while, maybe bringing the focus to the breath, maybe using those mindfulness skills we've been practicing. And again, if you start in a position and it becomes increasingly less comfortable, do take the time to rearrange. Don't try and soldier through it. It'll be good learning for next time you do the pose. As we move to come out of this pose, walk the arms in gently. Use the forearms to push yourself up. We're going to move from here into camel pose. So I'm going to chop my head off here. We're going to come, so again we've got that nice 90-degree bend in our knees. Pushing the hips forward, and then we're gently going to bend back. You can leave the hands here, you can take your hands there. And it really doesn't matter how much of a back bend you get here, get whatever's comfortable for you. There may be very little, like some people will be way back here, reaching their ankles. Me, I'm not very far back, but I can start to feel it. What can you, variations of this pose? Well, it might be nice to pad under the knees because it can put quite a lot of pressure there. If you're finding it too hard on the ankles, you can always tuck the toes or even put a cushion under the toes. If you're just finding being in this position too hard, then you could also come down onto your stomach and achieve something similar with, say, Sphinx pose, like that, or even onto your back. You could do it as well if you can't be on your stomach, in a kind of supported bridge pose. So where's my block? Just building that up and bringing yourself down. But for those of you who are with me in camel, I am again going to use the trusty cushion. Is when your knees get as old as mine. They appreciate a bit of padding. You can close the eyes, you can take the gaze upwards, you can leave it going straight, whatever works for you. If you're finding this pose quite intense, feel free to take a break at any point. I just find this quite a tough pose to hold for a long time. But I have a very grumpy lower back from too much time on a computer, I think. Maybe relaxing our shoulders a little, allowing the tension to drain out. We won't spend too long in this pose. And to come out, just gently bring yourself forward. Bring your hands down in front of you into a kind of tabletop. And from here, we're going to go into a frog pose. So I'll show you from a couple of different angles. But in frog, we're going to bring our forehands down to the mat. And we're going to send the knees wide. We're going to turn the feet out. So they're both, each foot is facing away from us. And we're getting the legs as wide as feels comfortable. So showing you that from the front. Taking the legs wide, turning the toes out. Bringing the arms down to the floor. Bring the forearms down to the ground. Tough pose, especially for men. Now, here, really would recommend padding the knees because it is intense. So I'm going to bag a blanket, I'm going to bag a cushion. You might also find it too intense to turn the feet out. You could always just tuck them in. And if this pose just doesn't work for you this way, you can also flip it upside down. So you can come down to lying your back. And just take the legs out. Again, this can be quite intense as well, but if you've got any bolsters or blocks, you can prop the legs up a little bit. Maybe hold on to the knees will make it easier. For those of you the other way up, I'm going to come down into that with you. Both the nice thing and the difficult thing here is if you've got blankets, it's quite easy for them to slide out. Now that's great. If you're finding a bit more space in this pose and you want to, it also means they can sometimes just be a bit slippy. You can go maybe a bit deeper than you want to. So again, we've got this kind of 90-degree bend in our knees. Because our knees only bend one way, so difficult to bend them in 90 degrees in the other direction for a counter pose. But we are going to counter this pose after this. And again, do give yourself permission if you need to take a break from a pose at any point. If you need to stop, readjust, find something that's comfortable. None of it's wasted time, even if we end up moving on, because then you'll know what works for you next time you're using this pose. Bring yourself out of this pose. You can walk the knees in, or you can bring some weight into the hands, push yourself up. That can make it easier to walk the knees in. And from here, we're going to come down onto our backs. And we're going to flex the hips in the other direction. So bring yourself all the way down and give a nice bend in the knee. So if you bend the left knee and then take your right leg and just cross it over. Now, if you want, you can adjust this pose as much as you want. So if you reduce the angle that you're bending your knee, you're going to make it tighter for yourself and bring your right leg closer to you. And if that's too difficult, then just keep walking that leg out. That'll give you an easier angle. You could even bring it all the way down if that's too much for you. And you can, if you're not comfortable lying on your back, you can bring it over to your side as well. That will do the same thing. I'm going to come here. You can also put your hands around your thigh and bring it in. But as we are trying to hold some of these poses for longer than we might in, say, a vinyasa flow class, I'd recommend making it as comfortable as possible. You could also stick a bolster under your right leg if you've got one to hand. You can also stick a pillow under your head if you want a little bit more comfort while we're down here. Feel great on the neck, great on the shoulders. You can have your hands on the floor, you can have your hands on your abdomen, wherever feels good. Now we'll take this pose on the other side, so we'll release our right leg, bring that down, whatever variation of the pose you're doing, and then plant that right leg, bring the left leg over, and then just settle in on this side. What might be interesting to notice here is, do you notice any difference between the sides? Was it easier? Was it more difficult to do it on this side compared with the other side? And which bits whereabouts in your body are you feeling that? You might find, as we hold this pose, that the tension just feels like it slowly drains away out of your leg. And then maybe relaxing the neck and the shoulders and making sure any tension melts from those areas of our bodies as well. And again, just gently release that left leg. We'll come into our final pose for today, which is Savasana, corpse pose. I'm going to do it on my front. Now, if that doesn't work for you, you can just do it the traditional way, which is just lying on your back, allowing your arms and legs to fall open. You can also take a seated position if that works for you, but really enjoying some prone corpse here. So again, coming down, lying on your front. Again, maybe taking that pillow to make yourself a bit more comfortable, and you can bring your arms down by your side. Or what I prefer here is crossing over your arms, forming a little pillow for your head. Allows me to stop my massive nose ramming into the ground. Again, you might want to put a blanket here under the knees, under the ankles. Finding whatever's comfortable for you. Maybe putting a blanket over yourself to keep warm. And when you've found your comfortable position, scanning down the body, starting at the top and moving down, releasing all of the tension out of the head, the neck, the shoulders, our chest and our hips, allowing our legs to fall open, ankles, our feet, our toes. Just feeling yourself slowly melt into the floor. There's nowhere else to be but here. No time to live in but now. No thoughts that need our immediate attention. You can stay here for as long as you like. Thank you for coming to practice with me today, and I'll see you in the next lesson.